Hello, hello, and welcome to Death Cafe with me, your Latinx bruja, Pastel Supernova. This is a space where I do my part to help normalize heart-led conversations about death, dying, and loss. I share personal journeys and will be speaking with insightful minds about everything to do with the inevitable. In this episode, you will meet Ash. Ash is a dental technologist by trade and philosopher by curiosity. Together, we take the time to wonder out loud about the possibilities of the time-space continuum, our choices and opportunities in this physical realm, and of course, about their views on what happens once we transition out of this world. We cover a lot of ground and really let our imagination soar in this one. So have a listen and enjoy. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Pastel. Thank you for having me on your show. I've been enjoying it a lot.
I'm glad.
Excellent content and super interesting conversations.
And now you're here.
Now I'm here.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ash. I'm your pal from times past. We met through a mutual connection who's been a huge influence on my life, and
Yeah.
so it was nice to meet you and keep in touch with you. And now you've become a huge influence on my life in so many ways. So definitely grateful for this connection and all the connections that led us here, even though, we grew up going to the same high school and so, we didn't know each other quite well back then, but definitely have been in circles together. So
We've
yeah,
been orbiting for a long time,
for a long time, a long time. Yeah.
and I think you're a huge inspiration to my life.
Oh, thank you.
For those of you who don't know Ash, Ash is an incredibly creative and thoughtful person, thoughtful in like big heart way, but also a thinker. And this is why Ash is here, because if you want to like go somewhere else on a topic that you cover often, Ash is the person to go to.
Love having those conversations and going in every direction. It's a specialty. It's to veer off course.
I heard this speaker talk. He is, oh, I should know his name. I will find out and put it in the show notes. He's an author, he's a writer, he's of an indigenous group in Australia. And where he's from, they call conversations or having a conversation yarning. And like a
Yarn.
ball of yarn, it can go in any which way. And that's exactly how it's supposed to go.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, fate, I guess, is like yarn as well, right? Isn't there a relation between fate and yarn and all the strings and how everything is all interconnected?
Yeah, weaving, which is connected to spiders. And I need to share this piece of information with you because I just heard about it. But a spider's web not only tells a spider through, motion and vibrations what's going on around them if they can't see it, but also if you tarnish a spider's web while they're on it, they react almost as though they've had a stroke.
Oh, wow.
So it's really connected to them in ways that we hadn't considered, which I thought was so powerful. Um, so there you have it. There's my piece of information.
Yeah. They're also like, dinner, right? You've messed up my perfectly laid out web. maybe there's like a little OCD running in there and they're like, oh, I gotta fix this now. Yeah, it would make me mad too.
Yeah, I hate it when people are in my house and fuck shit up.
Yeah, definitely.
So, um, let's get into this topic through your work, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
so we're here to talk about death and dying and all of what may surround that, huh?
Anything to do with the inevitable.
Yeah, so I work in healthcare, and it's a different sort of section of healthcare that you don't necessarily want to associate with death and dying, although a lot of people react that way when they have to go to the dentist. So, I work in dental technology. So I'm a dental technologist, which means I fabricate dental restorations. So anything from like veneers, crowns, bridges. I work with implants, dentures, partial dentures, ortho appliances. So anything in the realm of something you'd have to insert into your mouth that's not fabricated by the dentist. That's where I come in. So yeah, anatomy, biology, all of that.
Bones.
Bones. Jinx.
Tell me about bones. There is so much that is so much imagery that I associate with bones, but
Yeah.
mainly skeletons and what they mean to me because Santa Muerte, as you know, is in the embodiment of death and comes as in form of a skeleton. So to me, it's also divine energy and holds us up. So tell me about your relationship with the bones.
Relationship with bones. Well, I don't work with bones in your body, but I definitely work with the maxilla and the mandible, the temporal mandible joint, your TMJ. So then all of the muscles and everything that go with it, and then also what happens to your bone when you lose teeth. So your bone in your jaws are all spongy. And when you lose a tooth, that spongy bone tends to disappear, osteointegration. So that means like if you were to have like an implant placed to maintain your bone integrity, or so bones get resorbed into your body if there aren't natural roots and blood flow and everything to them. So people who tend to have dentures or have been like fully edentulous, like with no teeth for years, their mandible becomes like really, really thin because that bone integrity and density sort of disappears. So yeah, your bones can change in your jaw over time depending on how well you take care of your teeth, if you have them, if you lose them. So yeah, that's more where my expertise would be. I haven't, knock on wood, experienced like breaking huge bones in my body, if any. So that's good. I definitely was part of that generation, and it may even still be happening in ortho, but you don't really see it as much. Um, as teenagers, to get us all in braces, they would pull out your premolars. So you have two premolars, and they come before your molars. So they would extract all of your first premolars just to get spaced and then shove everything together really quickly. So that was like a big thing that happened. I got braces, I think in the late 90s. And so people around my age would probably be able to relate. And yeah, so sure enough, in the laboratory, I'll be working on cases and I'll notice people are missing their first premolars and I can actually check their age. And there is definitely like a good, you know, area of when that sort of orthodontic style came into practice. Um, I mean, it's an industry, right? It's a business too. So, yeah, get them in and out. So get those teeth out, shove those teeth around and on to the next, right? So, yeah, that's definitely where I would want to go, like where thinking about bones takes me.
I see your art because I've seen your creations. You've made all different kinds,
Yeah, I
but
have one right here. Do you want me to show you?
hmm
So this is actually it's a dental model from when I went to school, and then I cast a metal tooth and put it in there. And the anatomy, like the bone anatomy, is all from like a textbook that we all had to learn from to learn head and neck anatomy.
does it have a name?
I call it steel. It's the name of it's the last name of a classmate of mine at the time, and those were actually his dental models. And it was an ortho class, and we were doing a project where you had to like cut everything perfectly and do it all a certain way, and I helped him on his, and then he gave me his models after. There's more to that story, but we don't have to go there. But yeah, so those were his models, and the tooth cracked out. So then I just carved it all out and then put in a fake tooth. And then the rest of those pieces of wood were actually from a futon that I had from, 20 to 25. So a little sentimental meaning in the wood there as well.
There's a lot of spiritual infusion in that piece.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um, I know you don't deal with clients, right? You're
I do see patients, and it's not common for a dental technician to see patients because we usually just get all the instructions from the dentist. But it is beneficial in so many ways, especially if you're making like, you know, aesthetic restorations. Denturists see patients, right? So I'm not a denturist, even though I can make dentures. So there's a bit of a difference there. I would also see a patient if I'm making a crown and need to take like a shade match because like everyone's like, oh, your teeth are white and white, but there's like just a bazillion colors that we have to put into actually making that tooth blend into the rest of the family that they're joining in the mouth. So all the other adjacent teeth aren't like, who's that guy? And bully it out of your mouth. He wants to blend in.
Yes. I okay, so I was wondering because one of the biggest, most common nightmares that people have, one of the deepest fears is the teeth falling out. And
Yeah.
we have so much anxiety attached to that idea. And I was wondering that when you see your patients or the dentist patients, um, are how are they emotionally? Because you're dealing with their face, so I'm imagining quite nervous
Yeah.
and anxious, and I don't know. Tell me.
I mean, your mouth too, it's like the gateway to your head. Like there's so much health involved, not only physically, but it is also mentally. Like if you have confidence and you can smile and you can interact and you're not hiding yourself, um, you just are generally living maybe a happier life. So if you can't afford dental work and you're hiding that away, it could affect you having the confidence to even like apply for a job. So then it's just there's this chain reaction to how you exist in the world. So it has been amazing moments. Like I have had the privilege to work for 7 years in a prosthodontist office. So I was able to be chairside. And when restorations that I've made are delivered and have people just look in the mirror for the first time and have that like emotional response to maybe feeling a little more self-confident or knowing that they're going to be able to chew their food properly and digest properly. It's actually quite a rewarding thing to witness. So I'm definitely grateful for being able to experience that and help people in that kind of way.
I know a few people who have no teeth, and the uh, the care that they took to not let anyone know or see them without it was huge. And with one of them, it was my mom, and because she was sick from a very early age and got radiation and all that, her teeth just were a mess. So she had implants and like, because she would let nobody see her without them. But she would tell me about them. And I remember one of like a very intimate moment that we had was when she was going into her senior years and she had to pick new teeth and we were looking at the color, making sure it wasn't too bright, like didn't want to look like she had veneers in her 70s and whatever. We were just like looking through them and the sizing is so particular because you don't realize how much difference a millimeter makes when it comes to a smile.
Yeah, there's like been studies and charts, and there's actually this theory that the shape of your head is the shape of your tooth. So you can have like a square head or like a triangle head or an oval head, and then that's how we would sort of choose, like if you were into dentures, the shape of your denture teeth.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Does anybody ever talk in the office about the grief and the stress that patients feel or go through, like if they
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think in the prosthodontist office, sometimes that also became part of my job was almost to sort of sit there and just listen to someone's story, and how they came there. And not only is it all of those things that we've just talked about, but it's also a huge financial burden to have to get dental restorations too. So I think that's like an unfortunate part of working in this industry is seeing like, a lot of people could use help and care. And then, a lot of the restorations that are doing are people who are incredibly affluent and are doing things just for aesthetics. So, I think that there's quite like an imbalance, like it's quite a broad range, and I think like having affordable dental care is super important. And it's nice to see that slowly trickling in to our healthcare here in Ontario right now.
it's it's interesting to me though that this is a specific line of work where there is a lot of joy and a lot of potential depression and the things we've talked about, but also I think in the pressure of accomplishing such tasks, because I don't know if it's true still, but at one point, dentists were the number one, are on the top professions that were linked
Commit
with
suicide. Yeah.
suicide.
That definitely was a statistic that I heard for a couple of years. I haven't checked into it or heard that or if people are even, still making that tally, but that yeah, it's a grueling job, and your patients generally don't even want to be there. So
What is your relationship with death, dying, and loss?
I still have both my parents, and I know a lot of like the biggest hits, I think people that I have had in my life, it's definitely parents that hit the hardest. I've had a partner and through COVID, they lost their father and I was there for it. And that was like pretty incredibly intense experience because, no one was allowed in hospitals and by the grace of God, we were allowed in, and I was allowed to be there, by their side while it all happened, and be there when they had to make the call, to pull the plug, and be there to see all the machines die out, and then I was also a pallbearer. So also in that relationship, their dog passed away, but we had to get him put down and again during COVID. So it was actually under this kitchen table that I'm sitting at right now. We had the veterinarian come into the apartment to euthanize him, after they had been feeding him pancakes all day. He went out, he was a happy guy and then helped the vet carry him, down the stairs. So I think that's my most recent experience seeing life in front of me actually escape the body. Like, so that was really a time to go through for sure, to see the life and with the vet, he had the stethoscope and was listening to the heartbeat, and the heart fades and you're like, there's still a twinkle in his eye. Um, for her dad, it was for their dad, it was like harder. It was like um a series of health events that just progressed, and we were there for a while, and he was such an awesome dude. Like I loved that man, and I honestly, after I moved into this apartment, I think he was hanging out here with me for a bit. Um, and I mean, maybe your mom was here too, but because like he's Brazilian and then your mom's Venezuelan. And I kind of, when I first moved in here, there was a lot of your energy in this apartment. And so I do think that like when I was cooking, you had pans here, and I was using your thinking about your mom, and then kind of felt that she was here, and then not that he was there. I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're like partying like
Singing.
right now. So yeah, I definitely like tend to think about people who pass, and just be like, are you around, or just talk to them even in my head. So yeah, I was definitely very connected um to their father that passed away. And yeah, so still think about him all the time, and don't feel as much here now though. So I don't think anyone's really around. But definitely when I first moved in, there was for sure more stuff going on, but
Yes.
maybe it had to do with remnants of some of your things being here.
I did do a lot of spiritual work in that apartment. So, audience members, Ash now has my old apartment, which I lived in.
That's your plant, one of your plant babies.
Yeah, who was in my dream
Oh,
uh,
really?
days ago. Yeah, but yeah, I see you, Pathos. But yeah, I did a lot of spiritual work, and to be honest, I still actually have a tight connection with the spirit of the house.
Yeah.
But especially when I first left that space, I had like little guardians who like would tell me about the house. And so I did have little kind
There
of
was still,
energy
yeah,
being
okay.
like,
That makes
so
sense.
here's what's up, this is what's going on. I'm like, is everything cool? And I'd get images like I like zoom into the hallway and I scan the house and just make sure the house is all right.
I've kept it nice and clear.
Yeah, I was like,
Really
okay, it's
good.
fine. It's fine. I would know.
You would know. Yeah.
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 So not a spy cam, but kind of.
But kind of.
It might
Okay.
have been me just creeping over your shoulder.
Hopefully I had pants on.
Want to go back to your losses. And I know that you're not an altar person. And so far, everybody I've spoken with on this podcast is. So, how do you memorialize or keep some people around, or do you like what's your process?
I mean, I have my I was close with both of my grandmothers. And I have things of theirs. So like my maternal grandmother, I have like a sweater and a blanket, and I mean this sounds funny, but I love it. It's like this really old-fashioned vacuum cleaner. So when I clean, like I just think about, my grandma, or when I'm cooking, like she would always put on like a huge spread. So I always think about her. So I think it's mostly in like day-to-day actions and moments that, I'll speak to the people I love that have passed. Um, in more just that. I think too, for me, it's maybe not like an altar or shrine, but it would be like a relic, right? So carrying something around. My paternal grandmother was cremated, and when we got her ashes back, her denture teeth were still intact because her denture was so old that the teeth are made out of acrylic now, so they would just burn up like in a cremation process. But way back when, like they were so old, like they must have been like 60 years old. They're kind of like denture teeth were made out of porcelain, so they don't burn in the cremation ovens to that heat. The glaze on them melts, so then like some of the ashes get mixed into like the glass that's like on the ceramic tooth. And I actually kept her denture teeth from her ashes, and actually well, I carried it around in my wallet for a while. I know that's kind of crazy, I guess, to talk about, and I guess we're on theme with the whole tooth part of it, but that's usually what I do. I actually like we were talking about dreams and teeth falling out in dreams. And if you do look that up, it's, oh, it's a good omen, you're in for a good change or this or that, but then you look somewhere else and it's like, no, you're like doomed and like death is coming, so you can look wherever you want for that. But you were mentioning you had a dream about the plant behind me, and I've just noticed over the past 2 weeks, my dreams have completely intensified. So I wanted to ask you if you've been dreaming more, like in this past short time. Like, have you noticed a difference in dreaming, like over the past 2 weeks? And
Uh,
my deceased aunt visited me in a dream last week.
really? Tell me.
Yeah. So my mom's sister, my Aunt Bimby, who I love, and she taught me a lot of like my artistic skills as a kid. So like just so influenced by her. And you know, she was in my dream, and she's been in a couple of my dreams actually. But this past one was really neat because she opened her hand, and in her hand was a golden pearl, and she gave me a golden pearl, and it was unbelievable. And it was probably it wasn't this past week, it was the week before, like Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'm just currently like switching my roles in my like I have two jobs, sometimes three. So I teach dental technology at George Brown College, and I also work in a high production dental laboratory. So I'm switching more of my full time to George Brown College to teach. So this was right in the time that everything's kind of switching around, and I woke up thinking like, what does this golden pearl mean? And it kind of was like symbolic of like all of these changes, and maybe financial changes and all of this stuff that's happening. So it was like really just so vivid. And I remember the pearl being imperfect, so like an actual pearl, but made of gold, and it was really, really impressive. And woke up just being like, wow, like that, it felt real. I feel like in your dreams, we all pass them off as dreams, but I really think there's something to our sleep realm, that I think some people are tapped into and not afraid to talk about. And I do think there's something very connected with the dreamscape and maybe the afterlife. Like I think there's definitely something there with our spiritual side that I love to think about and explore. So I totally cut you off because I was like, what about your dreams? Blah, 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 blah on my end.
I'm here for it. I don't also discount the fact that the rays of light, as you were talking about your dream, is just
Move
starting
into the
to shine.
light.
The golden pearl. I mean, that's very powerful.
I'm totally
Wow.
doing it on purpose.
You have a flashlight. Like, I love that for you. That's quite,
It has felt very
wow.
special. Yeah.
It reminds me of the Ace of Cups in the tarot deck that it's a hand that's just offering a
Yes.
bounty.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's
also
definitely
it's so
it.
Venusian, like it's heart-based. I'm going to analyze your dream without your permission, but I would just say you not only are you being guided, but rooted for, and also the call to action is to lead with your heart. Like if there's any time to really follow your true love, like
Mhm.
not necessarily an entity, but like where your heart is leading, now is the time because that is where your prosperity uh,
Yeah.
is waiting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like. It was very warm. And my aunt looked great. She looked happy and like, yeah. She didn't say anything. I never heard her voice, but I know like it was her and it was there and it was kind of sunny like it is now, you know. It felt like this. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So
So
after you have that type of dream, do you just wake up and go cool and on with your day, or do you
I
talk
definitely
around
sat
it?
with it all day and for the next couple of days, you know, and really just felt like, wow, like I feel very grateful. Like I feel like it did feel like a blessing, you know, like to have that. You know, when you wake up, you're like, how do I get back in there?
Yeah,
I want to
there
go
are
back.
ways I could teach you.
Oh, I would love that.
You can
Yeah.
definitely revisit any dream. It's liminal space. You can go anywhere and do anything. And uh, it's more along the lines of journeying. So, not so much like lucid dreaming, where you can really hold a narrative, but you can go in with a certain amount of lucidity into this dreamscape and observe with more lucid eyes, observe things around that you may not have because you were in the moment. Ask questions.
Is it like on the border of like astral projection?
I would call it something along those lines, yeah,
Yeah.
because you're more aware, uh,
And in
but not
control,
dictating.
but not dictating.
Mhm.
So you're not in control then?
Well, you are in your own subconscious, so you can decide when to leave, when to cut it out. Uh, if you are able to stay relaxed enough to be in it and take in the information, because sometimes, I mean, I get excited the fact that, oh shit, this is happening, and then I whoop lose it all. It's gone. Um, but you can tap into other entities' energies, which to me is like you alluded to, is what I imagine the afterworld or beyond this physical plane to be like, where the time and space is not as we experience it here. So you can shift, you can move, you can learn. Things can feel like a lifetime and then you still wake up and you've been asleep for a couple of hours, you can go through this whole uh, other experience. Or a blip can repeat over and over again. It's really up to you. So I think it's not so much about whether or not you're in control, but you're in full trust. I think you really have to lean into the fact that
I feel
you
like that's probably the key, right? Is to just be in full trust.
You have to be in full trust. Otherwise, like I said, the moment you think you're in control, you wake up. Like that's common
Yeah.
occurrence, especially when you're learning how to lucid dream, but then journeying, even more trust. Because I've heard of people who go into these spaces, and as soon as, they'll go in with an intention of, I want to meet a spirit guide. And as soon as they get their spirit guide, a spirit guide shows up to talk, they're either suspicious of them or they're so freaked out that it's actually happening that they pull themselves out of the experience, or, they don't get the full juice because there's a part of them that's like digging back. But if you're in full trust, it's quite an experience, but it's like lucid dreaming, but more.
Yeah,
It's
you have
all,
to teach me. I'm here
yeah.
for it. I
Okay.
remember as a kid, I used to be able to, like, I would have really vivid dreams and then be able to take control of the dreams.
Mhm.
And it happened as a kid. And I remember what I would do in the dream is just like try to do something, and then someone would protest, and then I would be like, but it's my dream, like real like kid diva. And then it would work. And then there was actually like a point where it didn't work anymore. And then it got kind of scary. And then it just never happened again.
One of the biggest practices that is the most helpful and the most easy to do is to be as fully present in your waking state. The more you're present, the more you are in the now, the more you will be in the now in a state of calm rest within your dream. I think kids are so fully present that when they go into their dreamscape, it's old hat. That's what they do all day. They're observing, they, reflect, they're constantly investigating their own bodies. And another thing to do to keep you present in your waking state is to often look at your hands and to ask yourself if you're dreaming, and to look up and look around and just honestly just take in your surroundings. This habit will carry into your sleeping state. And so when you're sleeping, you will ask the same questions because you're still you. And then you will get different answers because you're in a different reality. And it's pretty incredible where you can go from there.
I also remember as a kid and maybe thinking back now because they were dreams or whatever, but it almost felt like out of body experiences where I would be in bed, but then I would like it would be the dream, but wake up and be able to like float down the stairs and then go into the dining room where, my aunts and uncles and parents would be playing cards, and then go out into the street and like up the street and remember seeing like the street lamps and feeling the breeze. Like there's in dreamscapes, there's like this wind that like if I feel it out in reality or like in awake moments, now it kind of brings me back to that feeling of being a kid and just kind of like floating around my street at night. So that was kind of reoccurring dreams, which, I have to just pass them off and say, th those were dreams. My spirit wasn't really floating around outside, but, some might argue, yeah, exactly. Maybe it was because I love listening to podcasts that maybe go in this direction because people have a lot more stories that, you can relate across a broad range of things that individually, or if you don't, you know, hear more like expand and hear a lot of stories, it might just sound like one-offs. But when you start compiling, like maybe a lot of people have had similar experiences, feeling this feeling or, having that, a dream. It's kind of neat to think, oh, why are we all, how do this many people, relate to that experience? Maybe it is something more than just a dream.
Maybe we really are all connected.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the loudest voices are the ones who love to spew skepticism. There are many, many voices who don't even think twice about these things. so they don't have to talk about it so much because it's ingrained in their culture to not doubt them. We don't know how anything works. Humans, we really like, we can do a lot of things, but we don't know everything. Anybody who claims that's not real because science is only 200 years old, first of all. So let's put a pin in that. Beyond that, some things don't need to be explained. In a lot of cultures, there is a thing that's called that which is not to be understood. But that doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean it's not there to help us and to it's all part of us. But it is healing, I think, to hear other people's stories because there's so many poo-pooers and naysayers.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
can start to doubt your own sanity or state of mind when uh, these things happen. And I think when people grieve, all these things happen quite a bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Going into different dreamscapes, I have heard a lot, and I've been in this one specific area that I've heard other people describe it as the beach. Um,
Mhm.
when someone dies, often you might be taken to a dreamscape that is a beach that might be a little bit more desolate, kind of. I know when I went there, it looked like it was in mourning, and I was in mourning, and yeah, that is like a very common port for lack of a different word, but you arrive there and you can communicate with the lost, the deceased person. Whether or not they're there, you can leave messages in the sand or you can absorb messages from them. Now you are a big ball of light like this.
Yeah, I know the sun's creeping over like onto my camera. I don't know how to. Okay, there. Whoa. Okay, now I'm just backlit.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're in this realm, I also have something that I don't tend to just share willingly, because it does fall into that category of you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You're making that up. And, so I just keep it to myself, but it's definitely a vivid memory that I've had since the dawn of my existence. And it is the memory of coming to Earth and like choosing my family and my mom and the feeling of coming into this body and talking to whomever was on the other side, and it felt fun and it felt loving, and there were multiple beings there that I was chatting with, and you have a tally and it's like, okay, you're going back and you choose to go back and you can choose to go wherever you want. And I stayed within my family lineage, and I truly believe that I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to share it here anyway because why not? I felt like in my past life, I was my grandmother's brother, who died early of appendicitis in, like the early, like, I guess it was like 1920s. I don't even know when he died. I know very little about him, but I kind of feel like that's where I was. And I think coming to Earth and like falling back, and then they're kind of like, and you're gonna be a different gender. And I was just like, no. And so I've sort of lived in this life as a non-binary entity, being born, female, but not feeling female and not feeling male. So I I feel like there's a lot that we don't know or talk about because, yeah, that sounds crazy, but it's a memory that I have and a feeling that I have that, and it just like predates like all of my memories. It's not something that like I've made up recently. It's something that before I could even think about or discuss, like it was just like a knowing that I had that this is how it goes. Like this actually is the normal procedure, and maybe not be as fearful of death. or dying, that know that there is some kind of pattern, or that this is all, a test, and how we interact with each other, and just to feel love and feel joy and be able to, is a gift, and granted, I was given a lot of opportunities and have a lot of privileges to be where I am now. I'm very grateful for all of that, but I do really believe that it's not cut and dry, that we are interconnected, and that it will go on, and that there is more understanding, and we don't even know the half of it. But I think sharing these stories and connecting with people who feel similar stories, and the audience is out there, and the experiences are out there, and real and valid, and I think it's such a cool conversation, and just to not be afraid of saying it or going there, is part of the test.
So, how do you see your transition out of this world? Do you think you'll go back to that same place from which you lay back into or out of?
Yeah, I feel like I'd go to the same place, but I probably would be still embodying this body.
Okay.
And that's the only logical way I can think about it, because if I was my past life's body when I came to this body, then that would seem to be the pattern. Like, I don't think you go back to one kind of specific thing, because I think I generally felt like I was a 20, 21-year-old man, like when I chose to redo it all. Like, it kind of was like, oh fuck, I'm dead, like I was having a good time, like shit. And I think it also helps to talk about this just because of all the podcasts I'm listening to and hearing people talk about their stories and experiences. And I think what's really cool too is, it's like, there's this institute. I think I'm gonna have to send you some links, like, for show notes too, because I'm probably gonna get this all wrong. I have a terrible memory, but it could be the University of Virginia, and they have this whole institute that looks into children who remember past lives, and it's so fascinating. But a lot of what they remember, they died like suddenly and tragically. So I wonder if there's something that has to do with that, because yeah, my grandma's brother died suddenly and tragically. So is that why? I have this memory. And I know, like, if you're listening to this, it's like, oh, well, you could fabricate that now that you know all this other information. But these are thoughts and feelings that I've had since, like, I can remember, and I just have never talked about it, but just experiencing and learning more, and kind of diving into what is this about? People have stories, and there's a whole department in a university, you know studying it, and some of the stories are actually cool. I think they have like maybe just under 600 kids, with all these stories, and they can go and fact check, street names, and even people names, some of them that they can remember, and it's just like phenomenal. So I don't have memories like that, and I never did. My memory started like and it was quick too, and it just was like, you're going back to Earth, like you're having a life as a human. Like, do you want something completely different? Basically, like, what language do you want to speak? All of these kind of things, and stick with your same, like, you can also stay with your same family lineage. So you can choose to go out of your family lineage. This is what I remember, like, we're not spewing facts here. We're just talking about something that I've
I'm
always
taking this
believed,
information to Wikipedia.
Yeah, like, I'm not religious. I am spiritual. I don't follow any organized religion. I think as a teenager, I developed my own. And I called it as a teenager because I was like a little punk. I called it Circle Fucked. That's the name of the religion I made for myself. And it's just thinking about, the shape of our solar system, how it's kind of like a cell in your body, how big is small and small is big, and their cyclical patterns and calendula patterns, and like just how everything rotates and it can go on different circular scales and come together in unison, but then can also go off. And you can relate that to anything in relationships and in life, and just patterns all over the place. I love math. I love geometry, and like, fractal geometry is dope, right? Like, so I just think everything's so beautiful. And also in like the religion that I made, it's like light and time and gravity and matter. So my friends for a while would always make fun of me for talking about the mineral kingdom. And I'm just like, yeah, like the periodic table, like those are your gods. Like the minerals are like, these are our gods. Like they know what's up. And yeah, so I definitely live on that line where it's like, you're gonna get me or you're not gonna get me. Like you're going to think I'm crazy, but I can also act like a healthcare dental professional. Like, so I'm a hippie in disguise as a healthcare professional. So it's so far as is working, but I will bring that like, and I think it is from those experiences just to bring that from a childhood, that maybe there is like a confidence of who I am, or feeling like maybe I have an understanding of life and death in a different way because I'm not thinking about it through the lens of what I'm told. It's more through what I have, you know, thought about in my own being and through my own experiences.
What are you listening to?
Yeah, so when I'm working in the laboratory, I have earphones in. So I have like a huge, range of music, but sometimes like what really passes the time are just good podcasts. So I have, like a top four, and they all kind of dive into like paranormal or supernatural. So I feel just, spending extensive time. It's like research listening to all of these podcasts, and it's usually like people calling in like their accounts and tales of, ghost stories, or, other weird things that have happened, or just stuff that's unexplainable, or, like cryptozoology, like all of that stuff. We'll talk about Bigfoot, like I'm here for it, like all of it, So I think one of my number one that I've gotten into over the past couple of months is called Otherworld, hosted by Jack Wagner, who's just the skeptic who finds these really interesting people to interview and talk about their stories, but he comes at it from like a very respectful, pragmatic point of view, and I think it's actually grown quite big over the time that he's been doing it. But he works really hard, and he's put out some amazing content, and just like you can just rock it through listening to it, because it is, I mean, at least I find it riveting, like some of these stories. And um I think another one too is Spooked. So again, just people calling in with ghost stories, but the way it's all done, and just sort of how the host, Glenn Washington, leads into it. It was very poetic with little stories and personal anecdotes and stuff. And so that's one of my favorites. Monsters Among Us. Derek Hayes is the host. So that's kind of more, you can hear from the title, people who are like, what's that in the woods that I just saw? Like some more stuff like that. Obviously more serious than how I just broadcasted it, but really cool stories. And then along the same vein as well, like Colin, this podcast by Payne Lindsay and I guess a bunch of other people, called Radio Rental, which is pretty fun. Like, so they kind of put a whole like acting kind of storyline into it, which makes it fun and entertaining. But then you kind of get launched into some sometimes pretty terrifying stories. And then let the actor sort of who hosts it is this character called Terry Carnation, which is the voice of Rainn Wilson that a lot of people would know from, I guess, like Office Space and stuff like that. So that's it. Those are kind of my top four. Um, I do love another podcast, but I don't really like to advertise it because I think like their politics are a little
Oh,
problematic. But definitely two Australian guys that put on a podcast called Mysterious Universe. So
okay.
yeah, I think that one they're on their like last season now, but I think some of the older content, a lot of stuff that they go into is well read and interesting conversations and stuff, but definitely can cross the line politically for sure, make fun of lesbians and things like that. But I'm listening to it, so that doesn't mean that it's good. But the content I do I've gotten a little bit, interested in. So I think that's kind of a bad on my part to be supporting something with bad politics, but the content is interesting.
All
That's
right.
terrible to say. I know.
It is good medicine to also listen to people who have very specific views that you disagree with and have feelings about, but still be able to listen to other things they have to say. We don't have to inherently hate the people we disagree with, even if
Right.
we are spewing some hate in our direction, but or
Yeah,
problematic thinking.
yeah, and it is interesting to hear other people's views or like why, people could think or have politics in those kind of directions and stuff. So I fully agree with you there.
Spooked holds my heart in a very special way because of the way of the storytelling, but also they talk to a lot of Latin American, Latinx, and Hispanic people, which view death from a different lens. It's a lens that I recognize and I feel familiar with, but I don't hear so often. And so when there is someone who passes and perhaps paranormal activity soon before or after, or these vivid dreamscape experiences that people don't quite call dreams. They tell the story in with a certain acceptance that every two sentences they don't have to apologize or say, I know this sounds crazy, but this is what happened. Like there's a certain ease into it that wow, I just love it because I'm like, okay, you're confirming my feelings by you also sharing a similar viewpoint, which is really cool.
I love thinking about that and thinking if there are patterns like before death, and maybe you launching into your career now, as a death doula to be closer to, people passing just in your orbit that need you there, that you'll start recognizing telltale signs. And I think there is like a lot of, written uh things that you can find to be like there are certain aspects and like I love hearing nurses
Oh,
stories
yeah.
like and people that work in hospitals, that are around death, on the regular. And I just love hearing those stories because they're real, and there are people who are do have like gifts that can see things that a lot of us can't or and I truly believe that it is
Yeah.
real.
My mother predicted deaths. She was very in touch with death. She predicted everyone's death, including her brother's. I remember that one specifically because she was really messed up about that one. Um, because he came into the apartment and apparently all night he was like playing tricks on her. She was in bed and he was like sneaking behind furniture and poking her head out, and she had seen him climb in through the window. We lived on the 15th floor, and also he lived in Venezuela. So
Wow.
there's that. But I remember that one in particular, she was pretty messed up about. And that morning they called us and they told us that he had passed. And she was always that way. I've always predicted births since I was a kid. I knew when people
Wow.
would be pregnant and just like blatantly would ask women, the thing you're not supposed to do, but I just happened to get it right. But then when I was in the death doula training program, our professor also told us to watch our dreams. And soon after, I started to see clients. So clients had been coming into my dreamscape ahead of time. And I have yet to meet them, but like there is a collection of people I'm starting to get to know that I'm sure I will see again. And I wonder if once I meet them, if I will have a déjà vu about the moment, or if what they've told me is just kind of like a preliminary interview so that when I meet them, I have some connection with them.
That's so exciting. This is going to be such an awesome journey for you, and I'm excited for this podcast to and where it's going to go. And I think it's such a awesome privilege to be on it, talking with you. There's so many things I would love to talk to you about, and like there's so many ways that it can go, and I do, I guess, tend to lean towards more of the like paranormal, supernatural, just because I'm interested in it and kind of actively studying it right now. Um, I think what something that just came up when you were talking, when my maternal grandmother passed, she passed in Ottawa, and I drove to Ottawa and was there in the morning and saw her body that, she had passed, and I saw her. And I saw her a couple times after she passed too. And, you know, at, and it was wild, but I went home out, like, so she passed in the morning around 7 a.m. and my aunt, not the aunt from my dreams, but my other aunt, and my mom and I went back to my mom's house, and we were in the backyard, and a hummingbird came over to us and kind of hovered in front of my mom. And then my mom had this little white like bench swing, like it could have been a bird feeder, just like a little decoration in a tree. And the hummingbird actually went and sat on the white bench and then flew off. And so when that happened, I was just like, that had to have been my grandma. Like there was just no two ways about how impressive that was, and ended up getting like a hummingbird tattoo right after that for her. So I think like also, going back to whether I have shrines, like for me, I think it is relics and symbols rather than like a place in my home, because like I feel like with my home, like things are always moving and shifting and changing, and that I'm occupying this space and this place and time, and that what you do put in places of shrines are the relics, are the things. And so even though maybe my shrines might be more transient than other, I think it still could be kind of thought of the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think there's any rule to how you hold space, because from what it sounds like, this reality is a blip in our existence, and it is material which we cannot take anywhere else. So if we bring it here, I mean, it's great and it adds comfort and ease to some people, but definitely that's not the only way to hold and to call and to be held by other presences that aren't physically here.
Yeah, definitely. Not even to like think about like the probability of us even being right here, right now, having this conversation, is slim to none, but it's happening. So that's pretty cool.
As the sun shines in your eyes. More.
Bye. Goodbye.
This is where we play Unchained Melody. Right.
I think like going back to the story of me coming to Earth, it kind of was captured in that I think it's Pixar movie called Soul.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then when I was watching it, I kind of was like, whoa, like, yeah, this is this feels right, that whole storyline kind of feels accurate. So I like the whole idea of, reincarnation and all of that. I find it really interesting. I think just like the one thing that doesn't make sense is reincarnation and then like ghosts. Like if ghosts are spirits that are not being reincarnated, you know what I mean? That they're kind of stuck. So that's where like my mind wants to, think about how that all makes sense. I love going there.
We could talk about this for hours. Just such fun stuff to explore and wonder. I love the way you think because you wonder openly and allow for possibilities in your scientific brain, which to me is the most scientific of them all. I believe that people who truly believe in science or who are true thinkers um, don't resist possibilities because they're possibilities,
Mhm.
and it
Definitely.
doesn't make them right or wrong.
We don't know what we don't know.
I would just love to turn into a tiny little being and just like maybe jump into your ear and like go have a party in your brain. Just
Yeah. It'd be
listen to
so.
your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun, and I could go on more with you and deeper in all the ways. And I think, it's always only the tip of the iceberg, but this is so cool that you're doing this. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.
Have a great day.
You too. Okay, I'm going. Bye.
Bye. And there it is. The podcasts and people we mention in this episode are going to be listed in the show notes. And if you have any questions regarding anything we talked about, including how to go deeper into dream work, please don't hesitate to contact me. If you want to get in touch regarding grief coaching and other end of life related services as well, please visit me at deathdoulapastel.com. Please contact me regarding any stories or topics for discussion at info@pastelsupernova.com. And you can also reach me on Instagram at deathdoulapastel. Please rate, review, subscribe, and most importantly, tell a friend about this podcast. This is an indie project, so your help is very appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, blessings and respect.